We took the sheetrock off of a blank, useless wall in the pantry and put shelves in between the studs. Now we have storage for 1,000,000 cans. Maybe it's not 1,000,000 cans, but it's a lot. It's a lot of cans. We have a narrow pantry off of our kitchen that has some built-in shelves and a blank wall that we can't use. If we put anything on this wall, this pantry will be too narrow to walk through. So what we're going to do is we're going to tear out this sheetrock and we're going to put in shelves inside this wall so that we can have conformal can storage. It's going to be great. Let's get started.
Residential walls are usually built by using vertical 2x4 boards with shorter 2x4 boards along the center section to provide stiffness. These boards are usually called studs, and this is what you're trying to find when you're trying to hang pictures on the wall. Most studs in the United States are 16 inches apart, but in the pantry we're beneath the stairwell, so our studs are actually 14.5 inches apart. That means our shelves are going to be about 14 to 14.5 inches wide. After cutting out the first section and determining that we do indeed have 14.5 inch studs here underneath the stairwell, I am able to measure and mark the other cuts that I'll be making. I then used my very old but extremely reliable jigsaw to cut out the sections of sheetrock that we won't be using. This action makes a lot of noise and generates a very large amount of dust, so I'm wearing my flight deck helmet to protect my ears and my respirator so that I can breathe. The camera works fine here. What you're seeing is the very large amount of dust drifting inside the pantry. It's okay though because I've sealed the entrance with plastic, and that contained most of the dust.
The next day.
After vacuuming up all the dust and mopping the floor, I was able to remove the plastic cover that had protected the rest of the house. There was still a little bit of dust, but this took care of most of it. I was left with 4 stepped shelf holes in the wall with studs in between. I'd intended to go a little lower than this, but you can see this electrical wire in the way, so I stopped here. The 3 shelves on the right will have 6-inch tall shelves. These will handle most of the cans we might run into. The narrow shelf on the left, which is narrow because of this wiring for the pantry lighting, will hold 8-inch tall shelves, and these will handle slightly taller cans.
Studs are made from 2x4 planks similar to this one. And the depth of this 2x4 will determine how deep our shelf can be. So we've got the depth of the width of the stud plus the thickness of the sheetrock, which is a little less than 1/2 of an inch. But a little known fact about 2x4s by people who don't do lumber, 2x4 is a lie. A 2x4 actually measures 3.5 inches by 1.5 inches. It's shrunk over the years, there's a whole story behind it, but suffice it to say that the 2x4 is a lie. But if you go to the hardware store and try to buy 3.5 by 1.5s, they'll laugh at you and they won't sell you anything. So just go with the cover story when you go to buy 2x4s, and we'll just know that it's fake.
The first step of construction is to cut a backer board for our shelf cabinets. The shelves will be glued to this backer board, and it will protect the wall behind the shelf cabinet in case any cans are put away aggressively. The type of wood used is called Luan. Luan is a type of plywood, not a person. Although I know a person named Luan, I'm talking about plywood here. Then the cabinet side pieces are cut. The sides are 3 3/4 inch wide because of the math you see right here. If everything works, when this cabinet is inserted into the cavity between the studs, it will be flush with the sheetrock on the surface of the wall. Then I cut the header and footer from standard 3/4 inch pine. These are going to be the pieces that the trim attached to, so they're a little thicker. And then I cut the individual shelves. I'm using 3/8 inch wood here to make a thinner shelf. I just don't need a 3/4 inch to support the weight of cans. This was a frustrating part of the job because the studs were not exactly 14.5 inches apart. They were bowed and they were twisted a little bit, so my shelves were slightly different in each one of the cabinets. Then it was time to glue everything together and make a proper cabinet.
Next day.
The glue is dry, the clamps are removed, and now we have the 2-foot tall can shelf, the smallest of the can shelves. Looks pretty good. Now we have the 2-foot, 3-foot, and 4-foot shelves, and then the 4-foot 8-inch shelf, all ready to go.
All right, you can't see the whole thing because it's really hard to get a good angle in this little pantry, but I'm about to take those shelves and put them in these holes.
A few screws are put in to force the shelves to lay flush against the sheetrock, but I also glued everything in place and used lots of clamps to hold it. Then I took the opportunity to paint the inside of the pantry. This particular pantry had only been painted on half of the left wall when the builders built the house. The rest of it just had primer on it. This house is 16 years old, so this is the first paint this house has had in all that time. It's been primer all these years, so I'm finally making it look good. Then strips of wood are glued in place where we remove sheetrock so that the trim will have something to attach to. The strips are flush with the existing sheetrock wall just like all the shelves are. Then the trim that will surround the shelves and tie everything together and hide our ugly sheetrock joints is cut and mounted to the wall. This wood is 3/4 of an inch thick, and this is the only part of the shelf array that sticks out from the wall, so we're conformal except for 3/4 of an inch. The last step with the shelves is to glue a vertical strip across the front of each shelf. These vertical strips will keep the cans from falling out if the shelves are bumped or if the house tilts. And finally, another strip of Luan is glued to the left side of the shelves. This will provide a place for the motion sensor light switch to mount, as well as provide mounting for future capabilities we're going to be putting into the pantry. All of those screws we used to attach the trim were countersunk and had wooden buttons inserted on top of them. When the glue was dry, I was able to sand them flush so you don't even know the screws are there. And then it was time to paint.
Okay, that's the first coat. It looks pretty good from a distance, but up close it needs a second or maybe third coat. The question you may be asking is, why didn't I spray paint this in the shop when it would have been a lot easier than painting it here in the wall? Well, the answer is simple. I'm stupid. But the longer answer is that we had to build this in place and cut these front pieces off to fit what the wall gave us. So we were kind of forced to do it this way. But if you ever do this, paint your shop, it's a lot easier than what I just did.
We are lazy, and we like automation, so a motion sensor switch is installed to turn on the pantry light whenever we open the door to the pantry.
What, you don't have motion sensors on all of your pantry and closet doors? The can rack is all finished and ready to go. Now it's time to put the shelves back into the pantry to make it truly a pantry once again.
12 seconds later.
So here it is, the completed can shelves, and with the old shelves back in place, you can see how narrow this space is. This being conformal really doesn't take up any horizontal space at all. It comes out 3/4 of an inch into that passageway where it didn't before. So that formerly useless wall is now full of cans. I've loaded this with 71 cans and a lot of non-can things because the cans just aren't taking up enough space. It turns out that 71 is only about half capacity because most of the cans are these smaller types, and we can fit a lot of these in horizontally spacing in these little pasta things real small. So we got to go buy more cans because this isn't full enough. But it really is going to do the job for us. I had no idea what the capacity is going to be. I'm thinking we may be more than 100 cans when we get this whole thing filled out with actual real size cans. Love this thing, and this formerly useless wall now has a reason to exist. It's very, very useful now with all these cans here, and now these shelves won't be cluttered with all these cans. So the pantry itself is going to be less cluttered, and everything's going to be great. It's going to be great, trust me, it's going to be fine. I hope this encourages you to add weird storage like this to your house. It's amazing how things like this that most visitors will never see will make a huge difference in how you live. Of course, being my house, they're going to see this because everybody comes over, they want to see all the weird stuff in the house, like the secret door and the Dome of Destiny, and now the can wall. So to do this sort of thing, it just takes a little bit of hardware, and in my case, a very understanding wife who put up with a lot of sheetrock dust in her house for a few days, which we will now be cleaning up out there in the hallway. But it all worked out well, and now we got this super awesome wall here, and I think we got to go to the grocery store because it's not full. We got to have more stuff. Thanks to our patrons for helping us to do stuff like this. You actually financed this wood and the paint and everything. We appreciate your help. We appreciate your support. And so thank you so much. If you like what you're seeing here, like and subscribe, ring that bell, check out our other videos. We have all different types, and let us know what you're building. We always are interested in seeing what you're doing. Well, that's all I have for now. I think I'm gonna go buy more cans.